I'm back, and this time my workflow will take the power of Cinema 4D's motion system to the next level. I'm gonna show you how flexible it can be by turning this animation, a sprint, into something more dramatic.
Tips, tricks, more tricks.
But before all that, I'm gonna set up a Mixamo Control Rig. Lots of gotchas, yes. You won't find information like this anywhere else. There's no time to waste, let's go for it. Picking up where we left off, I prepared this little diagram to sum up what we've done so far. I showed you how to create motion sources and how to reference them in motion clips. The data from the motion clips flows into a joint chain, also known as a skeleton. It's the skeleton that drives the geometry of our character. Geometry is also known as Geo for short. It works, it's great, but we want more control. So we're gonna add a few things to our current setup. Our geometry is going to be pushed to the end of the pipeline, and we're going to throw in our Mixamo Control Rig. So now, data flows into the rig, and all of its controllers will follow the position and rotation of the skeleton. It's by manipulating these controllers in the viewport that we can add our own custom keyframe animation. The data then will flow into a second skeleton that will be added along with our Mixamo Control Rig. Don't worry, I'll walk you through it. And finally, the data reaches our geometry again. I'm gonna try to cover all the gotchas and caveats of this, so just stick around. I'm gonna see how flexible this rig can be. Let's get started. We go to Menu, Character, and bring in our character object. Place it where it's supposed to be. We wanted to drive this joint chain, but this is not gonna work. There's a gotcha here. Once we set up our character object, it's going to attach itself to this other joint chain because it comes first in the object manager. Easy solution, simply make sure the dummy hierarchy comes last, and now this is going to work. Moving on, I'm going to set up another gotcha. First, I'm going to select children in this hierarchy, then Menu, Tools, Naming Tool, and I'm going to remove the Mixamo Rig namespace completely. And now I'm gonna show you this character object setup will fail because the Mixamo Control Rig is not capable of dealing with a different naming convention. But before I start, I gotta tell you there's a lot of ground to cover, so I'm gonna fly by the character build steps. If you really need that specific piece of information, well, I dropped a link in the description of this video that has all the how to click what and when. But my suggestion is, stick around, get the gist, and leave all that stuff for later when you actually build your own character. So, I'll select my character object, go to my Mixamo Control Rig template, get the root, get the pelvis, 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 hands, and when I hit adjust, check it out, it's completely off. I'm gonna hide the geometry so it's easier to see. Look at these. They really don't match. The Mixamo Control Rig simply ignored the first joint chain and attached itself to the dummies. Look at the naming conventions, compare them. See? Let's fix this. I'm going to delete the character object, and then I'm going to restore the naming convention. I'll select children. Here it is. Now, Tools, Naming Tool. And instead of removing the Mixamo Rig namespace, I'm going to add it as a prefix, and we're good to go. Back at square one, we add a character object, put it where it's supposed to be. Let me hide this dummy and unhide the geometry and the joints. So let's go. I'll select the Mixamo Control Rig template, root, pelvis, 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 hands, adjust. Check this out, we have a much better match. From now on, you'll see me selecting objects directly in the viewport quite often. So it's a good idea to make sure that I don't ever get to select geometry by mistake. All I need to do is to right-click on my geometry object, go to Programming Tags, and pick Interaction Tag. Disable viewport selection, and I'll repeat the steps for the other geometry object. Right-click, Programming Tags, Interaction Tag, disable viewport selection. As you can see, no matter where I click on the model, it just won't select any geometry. Good. Back to the character object. Let's go to the orthogonal side view. And as you can read here, knee should be bent forward. So we have to adjust this knee component. By the way, when I'm dealing with components, my favorite tools are the scale and rotate tool. So you'll see me switching back and forth a lot. I'm gonna click on the knee component. And before I move anything, I'm going to switch from local mode to the world coordinate system. And now I'm pretty sure that I'm moving only in the Z-axis. I did exaggerate a bit. In a real-world situation, you don't need to move it away from the original spot that much. But I wanted to show you that subsequent components also moved when I moved that knee. I'm gonna bring them back to that original position manually. So I'll turn snap on. I'll disable vertex snap. Then I'll make sure axis snap is on. Now all I have to do is select that ankle, move it to the axis. Now they align. Let's go to the perspective view. Good. Now we're ready to move on. Yes, I said a much better match, not a perfect match. I'm gonna open up another project so I can explain what's going on. This rig here on the left is identical to the one I've just set up. It's the one I've downloaded directly from Mixamo's character gallery. This other one to the right is part of an experiment. I brought the original model into Cinema 4D, then I got rid of everything but the geometry and the materials, made an FBX out of it and re-uploaded it to Mixamo. The goal was to check what Mixamo's auto rig system would do to a character that had come from Mixamo in the first place. And as I suspected, there's something going on with the joint's orientation. Something big enough to throw off Mixamo Control Rigs inside Cinema 4D. Let's compare the shoulder controllers first. They're not only different in size, but also the rotation is different. What about the knee controllers? These are even worse. Check out their position in relation to the knee. Now have a look at these. They almost touch the ground. Let's check the elbow controllers. Now have a look at this. My god, this is ridiculous. This is a recipe for miserable hours of work. I prepared a slide to show you exactly what's going on with the joint's orientation. They're so different, right? So the conclusion is, if possible, send your models to Mixamo's page and let it do its auto rig thing. As always, keep in mind this may change in the future. But I'm not here to take the easy path. I'm here to share some solid information, and this means I'm gonna keep on working on the model I've been building. Its functionality won't be 100%, but I'll get the best of it. If you're not interested in workarounds, you can skip to the next section. You may have not noticed yet, but there are timestamps in the description of this video. Moving on, I'm going back to the original project. And right here in the Attributes Manager, I'm gonna try and improve a few things with the controllers. Starting with the knee controllers. Yes, I'm going to select it. Let me zoom out a little bit. Yeah, move it up. More. Yes. Let me check this in the orthogonal side view. Yeah, move it here. I'm gonna resize it. Yes, looks good. Now, going back to perspective, it's time to mess with the crazy elbow hidden inside the wrist. Okay, let's move it. Better yet, top view. Yeah, I'm gonna move it back here. It's mirrored. The other elbow controller is moving, you see? I'm trying to keep it somewhat aligned to the elbow. Let's see what's next. Oh yeah, I'm gonna resize the hand controllers. Yes, I like it better this way. Okay. What's next? Oh, let's check these guys out. I'm going to resize them. And notice that you cannot rotate them because the other controllers move with it. There's only so much we can do. Let's have a look at the fingers. Oh my god. they're completely off. I'll enable snap again. Now it's a matter of selecting the first component in each one and putting it where it's supposed to be. Let's see these other four. Oh my, nasty. Okay, it's a matter of selecting and moving it. Align, done. Next. One by one we get there. It's a bit tedious, but not a nightmare. It would have been a nightmare if snap weren't on, but it is. Now the pinky, it's the last one in this hand. Let's check it. Everything is aligned. Okay, good. Now the other hand. Yeah, you didn't think I would get away with this so easily, right? That it would be mirrored? Well, thumb aligned. Next, index. Index finger. Well, now you have a point. Middle finger, you can be rude sometimes, but now you're aligned. Ring finger, you gotta commit. And pinky, I got nothing on pinky. The hand looks good. Alright, let's go for the finishing touches. The position of these last controllers won't have an influence on the rig. They're secondary, meaning they are a point of entry to extra functionality. Parameters we can tweak in the attributes manager like IKFK switches. Now this one, I know for a fact that it won't mirror, so I'm going to select the other one on the other side as well, so I can move them together. And just to be clear, I'm just trying to keep these last controllers visible. There are no guarantees they're gonna stay exactly where I put them right now after the rig is done. But as I said, they're secondary, their position is irrelevant. I'd say this is something we can work with despite all the issues. Let me have a look at these feet. I think I'm gonna make them taller. Like so. For no particular reason, just a matter of taste, we're ready to move on. Let's finish this. We go to the object manager, click the character object, and we choose animate in the attributes manager. You should see this retarget master tab. It belongs to this master controller in the object manager. So click on it and hit retarget all. It doesn't look like something happened, but something did happen. Hit the weight transfer. Now I'm gonna scroll down till I find my geometry. I have two objects, so I'm gonna lock this attributes manager, select both, drag them in, hit transfer weights, and voila. As Peter Cushing would have said, this rig is fully operational. Time to tidy things up. I'm gonna click on my character object, go to display, and my object manager will be set to none. Let's see what this character can do. I'll select the hips and I'll rotate it. Oops, I see problems with the leg, but nothing I would call a showstopper. Let's see here. I'll select this one and I'm gonna move it up until it flips. And there it is. But that's what the knee controllers are for. I'm gonna keep on tweaking this despite the knee controller's axis offset. Let's move it up. Yeah, we know the rig is not 100%, but we can still work with it. Let's check the hands. Alright. Now it's the elbow. Look, the axis is also offset. Just keep on working. Remember, this rig was meant to fail, so this is already lemonade. You know what? This is no longer a fake rig. It looks like a proper rig by now. Let's throw in some selection objects. First, I'll select every controller in my viewport. See? Now I'm going to Menu, Select, Selection Filter, Create Selection Object. I'm gonna rename it right now, and I'm gonna rearrange the order of my objects in my Object Manager. I'm keeping my hierarchy consistent, right? And the whole point of having selection objects exposed this way in the hierarchy is quite simple, really. You double-click the icon of the selection object you want, and boom! All the objects that belong to the list are now selected. You don't need to move your camera, you don't need to change views, you don't need to navigate through the hierarchies. I'm gonna hit Reset VSR right now. And we're back to the T-pose. Let's make some more selection objects. I'll start with the hand controllers. Menu, Select, Selection Filter, Create Selection Object. I'll rename it IK Arms. And I'm gonna drag it down, keep things organized. Check out the list in the Attributes Manager. 2 hand controllers only. Let's create another selection object, this time for the feet controllers. Select in the viewport. I'll go to Menu, Select, Selection Filter, Create Selection Object. I'm gonna give it a name and all that good stuff. I know selection objects don't look like much, but they're real time savers. Mark my words, you'll thank me later. Now that we have a nice setup, let's bring back to the game our old friends, motion clips. This is my dummy workflow, so I'll get rid of this and merge the animation I mentioned in the introduction. No need for geometry or materials, and no to reassign takes. Let's drag it to the joints null. By the way, if you're lost, it means you haven't watched my first video about the dummy workflow. There's a link in the description of this video if you want to watch it. Here comes our old pal, Add Motion Clip. Rename it. Go to our character's motion system tag, Bye Ghosts, open in timeline. Let's drag the motion source. Now we have a motion clip. Character visible again. And as Billy D. Williams would have said, what have we here? I'm gonna rearrange the layout a little bit so I can keep the timeline visible. I'm gonna close both bottom panels and I'll drag the timeline over here and we're good to go. As you can see, this animation is too short for my purposes. I need the character to keep on running in this direction, which is easy to do. My motion clip is selected in a timeline, so I go to the Attributes Manager, check Relative Loop. This makes the animation offset itself, and the character won't go back to the origin in each loop anymore. You see, I've added 3 loops to this here in the timeline, now I have 4. My character is running like there's no tomorrow. I've been working with computers for the past 36 years, so trust me when I tell you Cinema 4D has got a great set of tools. However, sometimes we face some situations where the best approach is to give cinema some help. I mean, think of it as some sort of a help me, help you kind of thing. I'll show you what I'm talking about. The final shot is what you've seen in the beginning of this video. The character runs, stretches her right arm, keeps it stretched, and laser beams go everywhere. But the trouble is, the way things are set up makes the process so difficult, I wanna cry. And I mean cry like our text drowning in a swamp of sadness. Yes, it's that level of hopelessness. Just think about it. Remember that diagram I showed you in the beginning? The animation coming from the motion clip drives that first skeleton, before the controllers. So if the goal is to keep that right arm stretched, that means I have to counter animate for every frame it remains stretched. Don't get me wrong, this has nothing to do with being lazy. It's just that this is not working smart. Besides, it might not even be possible to achieve that final result. Because sooner or later, I'm gonna run into a gimbal lock. And I don't want gimbal locks in my life, okay? Sticking to my never-ending story scale, it would be like the nothing sweeping Fantasia out into oblivion. And now that you know why I decided to put my spin on Cinema 4D's motion system, it's time to get to it. Some cleaning up first. I'll reset PSR for my controllers, both the hand and the elbow controller, like so. Let's check if everything is okay before we move on to the next section. Yep, it's all good. I need Cinema 4D's motion system to become more flexible. So the strategy is really simple. I'm gonna split the original animation into a couple of motion sources. And then I'll be able to create room for keyframe animation. The obvious workflow here is go to Animate, Add Motion Clip, twirl this hierarchy open, and start choosing which joints will be included in the motion sources I want. But the obvious is not always the best option. I love Cinema 4D's user interfaces in general, but this Add Motion Clip window is really not good. As the complexity of our rigs increase, the hierarchy trees tend to go deeper and deeper, and we cannot even resize this window. So here's my solution. I'm gonna make a copy of this dummy hierarchy. I'll hide the old one and rename this new one. The plan is to get rid of all keyframes that have nothing to do with the left arm in this dummy's joint chain. I'm gonna twirl it open and start deleting keyframes by the legs. Here they are. I'm going to right click, make sure I hit Select Children, and Shift Control Drag to delete all keyframes. And then I move on to the other joints starting by the hips. Oh, by the way, Mac users, it's probably Shift Command Drag to delete keyframes in your case. Now it's time to go for the neck and its own children, like so. Delete all keyframes. Great. Now only the joints for each arm have animation. I want to work smart, so I'm gonna copy the whole dummy, give it a proper name. This one will be all about the character's right arm. And now all I have to do is remove keyframes that I don't want from each dummy. Nothing on the right arm on this one. I have to select Children and delete. And this one, I don't want any animation on the left arm. Select Children, delete. Alright. I'm gonna fold both dummies, and now that the animations are isolated, I can start adding motion clips for each one. I'll make sure I give it a proper name, like so. And now I can do the same for the animation on the right arm. I add a motion clip. I stick to the same naming convention. Alright, I'm gonna hide this and I'm gonna make a copy of the original dummy. Unhide it. And now I move on to the rest of the joint chain. I still have to have animation on the hips, on the legs, everything but the arms, really. Keyframes are gone. Now it's time to add a motion clip for this last dummy. This is one of those workflows that you set up once and then you forget about it. You just keep on working with the motion clips you have generated down the pipeline. Okay, now I have everything I need. I don't want these dummies anymore. It's time to bring it home. I'll get rid of this Mixamo joint chain. I'm gonna bring the character back, go to the timeline, get rid of this motion clip. I'll give the motion layer another name. Run, no arms. Now I right click on the folder and add another motion layer. I'll give it a proper name This will be the one for the left arm. And yet another motion layer. This one is for the right arm. Okay, now it's a matter of dragging our motion sources to their respective motion layers. It's just a naming convention thing. Now, last one. Alright. I'm gonna check if the sum of all parts equals the original animation. If I made a mistake while generating those motion sources, this is where things become very clear. That's why I give it some loops to work with. The steps are the same for each one. You click the motion clip, then you go to the Attributes Manager, check Relative Loop, and define the number of loops you need. Let's see what we got here. Nice. Yes, look how far she goes. Run like the wind. Shout out to Christopher Cross. I'm gonna pretend I didn't see this intersection here in the knee. This is something you can fix, but I'm not gonna do it now. Instead, I'm gonna start manipulating my motion clips. So I'm gonna set this one to 0. Then I'm gonna drag the same motion source to the same motion layer, but I'm gonna leave a gap between them. This is how I make room for keyframe animation. I'm gonna put the playhead here. I'll unhide my controllers, pick the right hand, lock it in the Attributes Manager to make my life easier, and give it keyframes. Now I'm going to bring the playhead to the end of a gap. It could be here, or it could be here. Not much of a difference. It can all be fine-tuned later. And I created those keyframes because I wanted to make sure that the hand controller would be reset to 0 before the motion clip animation resumes. Did you notice that the right arm is not moving in the gap? Look at it. Now I can move that right hand controller without worrying about counter animation or gimbal locks. I'm gonna choose this frame here, and I'm gonna start moving this controller. Like so. Yes, let me find a good pose. I think it would be here. Let me rotate the hand. Yeah. I'm gonna make sure I have the keyframes. And move on to the elbow controller. This one right here. So I'll move the playhead and unlock the Attributes Manager. Yes, it's the elbow. As you probably guessed, I'll give it keyframes, both in the beginning and the end of a gap I created with my motion clips. Okay. Alright, so here's my character. Let me find a frame where I have a keyframe. For the hand controller, it's frame 22. Back to the elbow controller. I'm gonna move it this way. Yeah, almost there. I'm not happy with this pose yet. I'll set keyframes for the elbow controller and go back to the right arm controller. Tweak it some more. Yes, raise it a little bit. Let me check. Yeah. Keyframes. This wrist is desperate for rotation. Like so. Yeah, I think it's laser blast ready. I'll give it a keyframe. It's a solid good enough. Moving on to fine-tuning keyframes, I'm going to click the character object and choose the Display tab. From this drop-down menu, I'll select Active Controllers. And now, whenever I select a controller in the viewport, it gets highlighted in the Object Manager. I find it easier to manipulate keyframes when it's set up this way. I'm gonna right-click the controller in the Object Manager and choose Show Tracks. And this makes the timeline switch modes. We're no longer looking at motion clips. These are keyframes for the right-hand controller. I'm gonna select these keyframes, control drag to make a copy, place them here, and this ensures that the right-hand controller won't move during the gap I created with my motion clips. Let me check a different angle. Right. And from this point on, it's a matter of tweaking things here and there. That elbow controller certainly needs some work, but there's no mystery. Same steps. Time to wrap it up. I feel Cinema 4D needs more character animation videos like this one. I just wanted to share my workflow with you because I believe we have to take control over the animations we get, not be constrained by them. Alright, this is it. You know what to do. Hit like, subscribe, tell all your enemies and friends on social media about this video. Show me the money.